Nothing in this podcast is intended as investment advice, and the people in this podcast may hold positions in the stocks they talk about. Do not buy any investment based solely on the companies we mention. Please do your own research.
Hello and welcome to Monday Upbeat Markets with me, Graham Dixon.
And me, Kevin Hornsby.
Hello, Kevin. How was your weekend?
My weekend was absolutely crap, Graham. What about yours?
It was very funny.
I'm just giving you an example of why mine was crap, because I was in bed most of the weekend because I have a very bad cold and cough.
I'm sorry to hear that. Have you seen the doctor yet?
Don't be silly. What's a doctor for? We're here in Egypt, actually. You don't need to really even see a doctor. You tend to go to the pharmacy. The pharmacy just prescribes you what you need, antibiotics, whatever. You don't actually need a prescription. So it was a bit bizarre, really.
Well, I suppose in this day and age, you can just chat GPT it and then just say, right, I'd like this, please. And then that's it.
Yeah. Well, the pharmacies are very used to it now. So basically just ask. So I started taking an antibiotic and I am feeling a bit better, but it's still not cleared by any stretch of the imagination. So,
well, Kevin, this weekend, I went to a comedy club near where I live and I heard a very topical joke. Do you want to hear it?
I certainly do.
So how does ChatGPT sing Old MacDonald Had a Farm?
No idea. How does ChatGPT sing Old MacDonald's Farm?
AIAIO. Is that bad or what?
Okay, let's move on swiftly anyway to the Premier League. Let's see what happened in the football this weekend. Sunderland played with such an amazing passion against Arsenal to come back to 2-2. Man City then played against Liverpool on Sunday, and Liverpool got absolutely smashed 3-0. Though I have to say, I'm starting to hate VAR in a big way, even more than I did before. I mean, we had a goal disallowed. It wasn't actually VAR that disallowed it. It was the linesman saying someone was offside because they ducked to get out the way of the goal that would have made it 1-1 and made it much more of a game. But it really spoiled. I don't know about you. Do you not think that the VAR actually spoils it for the supporters? Like, I'm sitting there shouting and screaming my head off because we scored a goal. Next minute, VAR, all the anticipation behind it, and then boom, no goal or a goal, so you celebrate again. But it's just not the same. I just don't get it.
I remember when we didn't have VAR and everyone was complaining we didn't have VAR because there was this disallowed goal because of offside or whatever. And I'm not sure we can win either way. There's going to be.
I'd rather take the referee's decision now as that's the way it is. I really would. Yeah. I'd rather it was all scrapped.
The continuity of a game is spoiled by VAR for sure.
Yeah, you can have it. You can have it in certain areas. Goal line technology, the ball's crossed the line, fine, no problem. Yeah. I have no problem with that. Even checking a goal is offside or not offside, I'm not actually fundamentally against that. Okay, but at the same time, when it takes 3 minutes, 4 minutes, then it's not clear and obvious. So it's like, get on with it. If you can't see it straight away, it's not offside. But anyway, Arsenal are further ahead now. Manchester City are right behind them. And yeah, all very interesting stuff going on. The Fantasy Football League team is absolutely rubbish. For some reason, just nobody's scoring any points. Did you watch the Grand Prix?
I didn't, no.
Sao Paulo Grand Prix in Brazil. Lando Norris brought it home tape to tape. Oscar Piastri fell back as well. So Lando Norris won the sprint, got pole, and won the Grand Prix. So he's now 24 points clear of Oscar and 49 points clear of Verstappen. So I think that's probably Verstappen done. Only 3 Grand Prix left. Only effectively, 75, 85 points available now. So we'll see. Yeah, what's your thoughts on what's happened at the beautiful BBC, hey? with Mr.
Yes,
Trump's
I
speech.
see, Tim Davey has gone, and so too has the head of news. I think she left simultaneously. Yeah, it was pretty disastrous for the credibility of the BBC.
When you see what they've actually done, what a disgrace! What an absolute
Yes,
disgrace!
I think it was over the Panorama program about shortening a speech by Donald Trump. Is that correct?
It wasn't shortening a speech. I watched it. Now, what they did was they took one part of his speech and then cut it, and then something he said 56 minutes later, they then tied into this, which basically made it look like Trump was inciting violence. Okay?
I'd love to see that. I haven't seen that. Yeah.
Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. And I mean, it just comes to show is fake news. What does it tell us about the media today in general? But now we're looking at the BBC, who we thought, okay, hopefully they're a bit more on board than most. But who controls it if that's the case? Because this is obviously very, very politically driven. It was before the elections. It was basically trying to paint a bad picture on Trump. And we're not even Americans. And there we are, the BBC basically
I know.
fighting against who is supposedly...
Do you watch the BBC in Egypt?
No, never.
No. Okay. No, it's apparently, I mean, the BBC's name, I think, over in the UK has kind of lost its credibility to a large extent. But from what I understand, internationally, it's still held in high regard. And I just wondered how long that's going to take before, if they start losing their credibility, which is, at one stage the bellwether of international journalism, then what hope is there for the BBC?
In the UK, I would say more people watch Sky News possibly than BBC now. But
I think it's GB News now.
GB News as well is coming in there as well. Yeah. So anyway, we've just had news also that the USA government looks like it's reopening. 8 of those Democrats crossed that line, and they've brought the funding back. The government's going to be funded till the 30th of January 2026. No one fired until the 30th of January 2026. The House of Representatives got to approve it, and then Donald Trump obviously sign it off. So within the next 1 to 2 days, the US government should be moving again. How do you think that's going to impact the markets?
I think that you're going to see some very interesting companies that are exposed, particularly to the US sector, which sounds an incontestable statement, but there are certain companies that are expecting a listing. The SEC, for example, has been is a government organization that's halted the IPOs of probably many a company because 90% of their staff have been furloughed. So I think you're going to start seeing a new raft of IPOs coming out, and some of those will benefit companies that are actually listed over here that have an exposure to the US market.
But I think in general, we've seen silver go up in value. We've seen gold go back up in value to more like 4,100 as I'm recording this. Silver's just about to hit 50. In fact, there it was. It's just hit 50. We've also seen the crypto market increase a little bit as well. You've seen Bitcoin starting to go back up. Bitcoin.
Kevin, did you see that tweet from Michael Saylor at the weekend?
No, I didn't see it. What did he say?
Said buy now. The weekend, and I was going to say the currency went up about 3 or 4%.
Yeah, well, we're talking about 106 for Bitcoin, still way below the highs of 125 or whatever it was at. But it's. I think we're going to have a massive Santa rally. I really do. I think it's going to be a US relief rally, blow off top, whatever you want to call it. Some of these big players are massively overvalued as far as I'm concerned. But we've got small caps, which are massively undervalued, and there's going to be a rotation. It could be painful, but there's going to be a rotation.
Do you want to hear something that I went to on, I think it was Thursday last week? Oberon Capital, there's the brokerage.
Oberon, yeah.
They had a couple of fund managers doing presentations. One of them was a very well-known fund manager by the name of Richard Penny, who used to be at Legal and General for 16 years. He's very highly rated small cap fund manager. And he reckons that the UK small cap is in for a golden era over the next 3 to 4 years. And he actually cites the fact that a lot of money has migrated over from small cap, high growth situations in the UK over to large cap, high growth situations in the US. And I think, as you say, it might be a blowout top coming up, and hopefully that will drag us up with it. But I think, the old adage, Kevin, is, America sneezes, we catch a cold. I guess what he's trying to say is that maybe there's a detachment at some stage where the US sneezes and we don't catch a cold. We actually end up being pretty happy and healthy. So
yeah, I think there's a lot of nous in that. Ultimately, when you think about huge numbers of people in their ISAs and in other investment vehicles that they have, whether it be pensions, have invested significant amounts of money in the US stock market. And that money is starting to come back out. And where is it going to go to? If they're UK people, they're probably going to put a portion of it, at the very least, into the most undervalued part of the UK market, which is basically the small cap market. And especially when we're heavily resource based. And we've had one of those success stories in GMET.
Absolutely, yep. Guardian Metals has been an absolute fantastic winner. I think, how much has it gone up, Kevin, over the last year, percentage-wise?
I think it listed at 7.5p, and it hit £1.45 just recently.
And now it's trading at 120.
120 something, yeah.
Okay, well, look, and now I would like to introduce our very special guest, Mr. Oliver Friesen of Guardian Metals. Welcome.
Hey, Graham, how you doing?
Great, you?
I'm doing well. Good to chat again. Kevin, good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you, Oliver. Now you're a married man and a company with extremely reasonable market capitalization from where you came from. So yes, it's good. Thank you for coming on this podcast. And I suppose first question first is tell us your story. You were Golden Metal Resources, I think, and that came to market, as we well know, on my birthday 2.5 years ago. What's happened since, and where are you now?
Yeah, well, it's been a very busy 2.5 years, but I think the next 2.5 years and beyond is going to be even busier. So, you mentioned, Kev, we IPO'd in London, in the midst of a very, very challenging market. It barely got it away, but we built this company around Pilot Mountain, which is a very significant project for tungsten in the United States of America. Tungsten is a metal that China, as of about 8 months ago, banned the exports of. So it's a metal that we need to reshore mine production of as soon as possible. And we're quite confident that Guardian has the leading position, the best position within the U.S. market with our Pilot Mountain and with our Tampa Ute tungsten projects, both in Nevada. So where we're at now is we're moving from sort of the exploration into development. And then our goal is to deliver both of these mines into commercial production before the current administration leaves office. So it's an ambitious goal, but we're confident we have the tailwinds and the team and the assets where we can deliver on that.
What has actually changed then, Oliver, in those 2.5 years in terms of tungsten? I mean, just so everybody understands, tungsten is the main play here in terms of both Pilot Mountain and Tampa Ute. But you don't have an inconsiderable amount of silver. You don't have an inconsiderable amount of garnet potentially as well in terms of adding to the bottom line, and various other things as well, which maybe you can go into.
Yeah, tungsten has changed a lot in the last 2.5 years, and it's been really encouraging to see the macro environment really support what we're doing from not only a tungsten perspective, but also a U.S. government perspective as well. So 2.5 years ago when we listed, like I said, no one cared about tungsten. No one was really looking at, mined in the USA. And fast forward, here we are. The landscape has shifted considerably, but also at the same time, I think we're quite early in that. Tungsten is still not a household name. There's still a lot of metals that are much more of interest to the generalist investing public than tungsten, but that is changing. And I think a big part of that is the fact that China announced an export ban February 4th of this year, and China, along with Russia and North Korea, mine and produce and are responsible for about 90% of total global supply. So we have an over-reliance on China, Russia, and North Korea globally for our tungsten. So what that means is that we need, safe, domestic, friendly sources of mined tungsten. So the price in since February, when the export ban went into effect, has more than doubled now. I think the latest price is around $670 an MTU, or $67,000 a ton. When we started this journey, it was sub 30,000. So we're more than double that now. But we're still in a market where it's very hard to get your hands on the material. And also, it's probably worth covering, because obviously there's some news this weekend, but the tungsten export ban is still in effect. And as far as we know, China has been mining tungsten at a very high throughput for many, many decades now. So their ability to oversupply the market now is certainly dwindling, with a lot of those mines being depleted or going underground. So we feel quite confident about the future outlook here. But even if the landscape were to shift slightly, with what we've seen over the last year, which is China can shut off exports at any given moment, we're very confident that the understanding now across the U.S. administration, and I would say in the Western worlds as well, is the fact that we need safe domestic Western sources that we can rely on. Because even if the status quo changes, we still can't be in a position where we're over reliant on countries like China, Russia, and North Korea. So we're very confident with the future outlook, and especially in the U.S. as well. The landscape from the government perspective is very positive for domestic mining.
Oliver, do you see your entire supply of tungsten going to the US, or do you have additional demands from other NATO countries?
Yeah, it's a good question. So what I think is unique about tungsten, and probably worth mentioning, is the capacity, the midstream and downstream capacity. So effectively what I'm trying to touch on is the ability of the industry to take what we would produce at our mines, which is a tungsten concentrate, and turn that into usable tungsten products. That capacity actually exists in the US. Now, that's quite different than antimony and rare earths, where even if you mine a concentrate on US soil, in a lot of cases, that has to go to China for what we call refining. So it's a unique situation in that there's overbuilt midstream and downstream processing capacity for tungsten. But right now, it's being underutilized because they can't get their hands on raw material. So with that being said, because of the capacity that exists within the US, and it is very much, there's a lot of excess processing capacity. And there's even capacity in Nevada, believe it or not, to process what we would produce. So we believe that the vast majority, if not all, of our concentrate would certainly be processed in the US, and very likely consumed as well, because the US alone consumes north of 10,000 tons of tungsten per annum. So there's certainly excess demand for our material. So, and given would be a U.S. mine source, we'd love to see it mined, processed, and also consumed entirely within the U.S.
From the point of view of how much you're potentially going to produce in Pilot Mountain and Tempayut, how much of that, as a proportion of that sort of 10,000 tons you were talking about for the U.S., is that likely to be?
Yeah, just to be clear, we need the relevant engineering studies to confirm all this. But our goal is to effectively replace what China formerly exported into the U.S. So formerly, before the export bans went into effect, and now there's no material flowing. Before that, China was about 30 to 40% of the U.S. market. So that was their export. So our goal is to fully replace that. So effectively, we want to be in a position where the U.S. doesn't need to import any material from China anymore. So we need the relevant engineering study to confirm that. But our goal, based on the size of the resources, based on what Tempayut produced historically, our goal is to replace the former Chinese exports of tungsten into the US.
Okay, and from that perspective, if in the last year or since you stated there in February that the price of tungsten has doubled, what is that going to do to either a feasibility study or the pre-feasibility study that you're about to do?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly helpful because, you mentioned some of the other co-products and byproducts that exist. Now, those are important, but at the same time, these are tungsten primary projects, right? So that means that, very likely 80%, this depends on what the actual prices end up being, but very likely north of 80, maybe even 90% of revenue would come from tungsten. So, what that means is quite simply, you take we have our kind of back of the napkin models for both projects. And the main sort of the first line of the whole model is price of tungsten. So you just take, $30,000 a ton and you type in the current price. Now, we obviously don't model based on current price, but we can understand what we think the economics might look like if we are in a position to sell the material at the current price. But obviously, as the price moves up, the actual sort of numbers that we can use to forecast out for the more of the life of mine obviously improve quite dramatically. So yeah, the price going up is really helpful for us, and especially as we kind of are in the middle of this PFS process for Pilot Mountain.
Yeah, and that was my other question when I've been sort of doing the sums in my head, is that from the perspective of the US government, they've obviously already given you a grant in terms of Pilot Mountain. There's potential for more grants, stroke funding, stroke basically helping you get to production as quickly as possible. Is there not a great argument for the US government to actually put a floor price into these commodities, whether that be tungsten, copper, silver that they've just added as well, et cetera, et cetera? It seems inevitable that they need to put that floor price in because it's more expensive to mine these things in the Western countries.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. So I guess just to answer the last point first, we have acquired projects that we believe work at the historic pricing norms, right? We don't go into these projects under the assumption that we're going to get a floor price, because that would be irresponsible for us to do. So, that's the first thing just to note there. However, obviously a price floor would help us tremendously, right? If we can say to the bankers, hey, here is our model, here's our PFS, and if the minimum price we ever could sell at was X, then obviously you can model your economics on that basis, and that's very helpful. So we have seen MP materials get a floor price in the US. So I think that's why we're probably having the conversations, because we've seen it done quite recently. And just philosophically, do I think that should happen? Well, if you look historically how we got to where we're at right now, which is, China mines and produces 100% of germanium, 100% of gallium, 80% of tungsten, you go down the list, rare earths, it's because what we've seen in the past is China is willing to, as you mentioned, Kevin, subsidize their own domestic mining industry. So what that means is that it effectively, historically, has put Western world producers out of business, right? And that's how they've maintained this incredible market share for all these really important input metals. And tungsten's not, tungsten has seen this before, in that in 1980, I think it was the most recent time this happened was China flooded the market, right? So they saw other mines popping up and they said, we're going to flood the market. We're going to kill the price. We are willing to subsidize our mines at this much lower price. And Tempa Ute, actually, it's incredible. It was a fantastic operation. It was very profitable. We have all the production logs and records, and all of a sudden, they shut down quite quickly because the price dropped considerably. And so I think that situation should be sort of a warning or a bit of a poster child for what China is willing to do in the name of maintaining market share. So the reason the price floor helps is because it sort of minimizes or completely reduces any effects from flooding of the market or any anti-competitive practices out of China. So we're very encouraged by the rare earth floor price that we've seen. and certainly along with everything else we're doing and really trying to tap into as many tailwinds as we can, would, as you can imagine, we're looking to mimic a lot of the things that MP has done. So we're certainly would be encouraged to have that conversation, and I think it's something that I think would be really impactful for not only us but also the domestic tungsten industry, plus every other metal that the U.S. is looking to reshore production of.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Okay. So just so everybody knows about Guardian Metal Resources, we have a little gold play and a cat as well, which we very rarely talk about these days. So when are you rolling them out and creating another company?
Who said we're creating another company?
I did just now.
Oh, well, it's an interesting idea. Certainly, we put out an announcement maybe a week and a half ago about Garfield. So sort of laying a lot of the cards on the table in terms of where we're at with our understanding. Every time we do work, the project gets more and more exciting. We also have Golconda as well, which is a drill-ready Carlin-type gold project. So between Garfield, which has really evolved into an epithermal gold play, with Golconda, as I'm sure, investors and those that follow the story can probably recognize, is there's a very exciting opportunity with just those two assets alone. So I won't comment as to what we're doing with those, but what I will say is that we are moving forward plans to advance. Well, I need to be careful how I say this, but we're moving forward plans to ensure that our investors take part in the upside of those projects, and we want to see them move forward, right? I mean, the price of gold is around $4,000. I think this is the time. We've been paid to wait, in that when we first started this journey, it was sub 2,000. We've done a lot of really good work to prove up the gold potential, and we think now is the time to move these forwards to the benefit of existing shareholders. So I won't say exactly what the plan is, but I'll say definitely keep an eye open for further updates from the company as we kind of roll out our plans to make sure that these projects move forward in 2026.
Okay, so you've been a busy man. And I noticed on Aquas this morning that they launched a new IPO, Delta Gold Technologies, and you're a pretty big shareholder in that. So do you want to just tell us a little bit about that? That's coming at the end of November.
Yeah, I guess that did go out today. Good pick up there, Kev. Yeah, so I'm a shareholder of that company. I just want to make it abundantly clear. I am just that. I'm a shareholder, but a very supportive shareholder. My time is focused on Guardian. That we have a huge task at hand to develop and push forward these two mines. But obviously, I'm at my it's at my whim to go and invest and support other companies. So it's an exciting one. It's in a much different space. It's in the quantum computing space. So I'm not going to even pretend to know nearly as much about quantum as I do about geology and mining and exploration. So that's why I'm a shareholder. But yeah, it's one that I certainly should be interesting, and that's why I have the position that I have. But just reiterating, my focus on a day-to-day basis is Guardian, because we have an excellent opportunity here to over the next couple of years here with this environment and the projects that we have.
Very good. But it actually did come about through a connection in Guardian originally, and maybe that story will be told another day. But yeah, we look forward to seeing how that all works out.
Yeah, I mean, just to be clear, I mean, they're completely separate, obviously, and it's like I said, it's a different field altogether. But yeah, I'm a large shareholder and looking forward to seeing that company IPO and beyond.
Good. So going back to Pilot Mountain and the PFS, when can we expect some figures, without putting you absolutely on the spot?
Yes. So we've put publicly by the end of H1 2026. What we have done there is we've had a look at really what our major goal is, which is to deliver these two mines before Trump leaves office. So what that means is that we've looked at permitting, the way that you permit mines in the US. We've looked at, obviously, the relevant engineering steps we need to take, the PFS, and then the definitive feasibility study. And really our focus is on delivering the mine at the end of the day, right? That's where we need to get. That's where we think we get the best value for this business. So what we've done is we've looked at the relevant steps, PFS and DFS, And what we've done in the name of making sure that the mine permitting moves forward at the pace we need it to, what we're delivering is what we sort of internally classify as a PFS plus. So there's, PFS studies can range tremendously in terms of how robust, how developed they are, where you're at with the trade-off studies. So what we're looking to deliver is a PFS, like I said, internally we classify as a plus, which is closer towards a DFS on that spectrum of PFS to DFS. So what that means is that we can use a lot of the work we're doing now for the PFS to plug directly into the relevant permitting we need to deliver for the end of 2028. So within H1 of 2026 is what we've put out to the market. And the important thing to note is that because of the robustness of this PFS, it will allow us, or the way we've structured it, it will allow us to move very seamlessly into the DFS. And a lot of the work that we're doing now is actually to support or directly plug into the DFS as well. So because of that timeline, we're quite realistic about our timelines. I see a lot of companies online sort of tout these, we're going to be in production by 18 months. And you kind of look at the progress and you go, well, that's just not realistic. So we come out with timelines that we think are very realistic. Obviously, they're ambitious. We need to make sure we're doing everything we need to do, and we have the team that's doing that right now. But that PFS will be a really important part of the puzzle, because we can permit on the back of it, and then also we can move very quickly. There's not going to be a huge lag time where we go PFS, okay, let's figure what the next steps are. No, we know the next steps, and some of the work we're doing now is to support those next steps, all in the name of delivering Pilot Mountain, and then also we believe Tempaiute before the current administration leaves office.
So that leads on to my next question with Tempaiute. 1984, Tempaiute, or 1983 for sure, was producing tungsten, and obviously digging it up and bringing it out. So how many more steps ahead are we in Tempaiute than in Pilot Mountain? Because obviously a lot of the stuff has been done. I presume you want to go back and make sure you can make the most of Tempaiute, but at the same time, are we likely to be first production in Tempaiute as opposed to Pilot Mountain because it's been done before?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, Kevin. It's one that I get often now. So what makes Tempaiute unique is, as you mentioned, Kev, it was a historic producer in the 1980s, and a big one at that. I think actually I tweeted out a couple of weeks ago some photos that I was sent from the ribbon cutting at that project. And obviously a project to have a ribbon cutting and a lot of people show up, it kind of puts into context how significant this project was. And it was the cornerstone of U.S. tungsten production for many years. And that district is incredibly important for U.S. kind of tungsten for the history books, effectively. So what we have there are a few unique elements. Number one, patented mining claims. So the historic mined area was all within the patent mining claims, which means you can just permit a lot more quickly. And I encourage listeners just to go and ChatGPT difference between patented and unpatented mining claims in the U.S. The other unique thing is the infrastructure, and that's probably the thing that is most compelling there, is the infrastructure that is in place. And what that means is that we don't need to go and build another even pad for the mill site, right? It's already there. The mill shell is there. All we have to do is go in and utilize the plinths and the foundations that are there. And it's almost, we kind of describe it as a bit of a plug and play operation, in that a lot of the infrastructure that sits there, we can utilize and build on top of. On top of that, we have the substation as well, the 3,000 kilowatt substation. So that saves us a tremendous amount of time on the construction timeline. So that's why, it's a bit further behind right now in that we're drilling for an updated resource. However, once that gets established, we can very quickly move through the engineering. We can also, we've announced we're starting sort of what we consider the mine permitting steps, Q1 of next year. So we're kind of saying, okay, we're going to assume we're going to develop an upgraded resource based on what was historically there. And then we can engineer around that all the same time while permitting is moving forward. And then the construction timeline is a lot more condensed than pilot. So which one's going to come out first, I don't know. What's also interesting is the fact that we've noticed in the 2 months we've been drilling now. So we started our first ever program in September. the drilling is going about almost 5 times faster now than it is at pilot. And that's one of the reasons why pilot is, I think, is taking a little bit longer, is the fact that to drill one hole can take a month, right? And we're looking at ways at fixing that, and we'll have more announcements about that in the future. But it's much harder to collect the data we need to support the PFS when one hole can take 2-3 weeks, right? And only up until July, did we have the resources to go and potentially have more than one drill rig. So we're working through that now, but thankfully we started the drilling at pilot when we did, which was quite a while ago. But the benefit, what I'm trying to point to, is the benefit that we have at Tempa-Ute, which is we've already drilled more meters in 2 months than we typically drill at pilot within 6-7 months. So what that means is that to get to that resource stage, we're collecting way more data. We've actually had to hire extra people at Tempa-Ute to process all the core. So we're drilling at Deadeye. We have other zones. There's 4 of the zones we want to drill. So now we're quickly moving through those steps, which I think is one thing that at the end of the day could also lead to Tempa-Ute potentially nudging out Pilot Mountain, assuming everything we're doing is successful, because we can get access to information much, much quicker than we can at Pilot Mountain. And just to put into context why that is, it's simply just a function of the ground conditions. So Tempa-Ute, it's really competent marble that we're drilling through, and skarn, which is where we find our tungsten. And at Pilot Mountain, we have this sort of broken up alluvium layer on top of everything. So we have to drill through that to get to the skarn zone. So because of that upper layer, the holes have a hard time penetrating through that. Now, in a mining scenario, that stuff doesn't really matter because you just scrape it off anyways. But when you're collecting data and drilling, it just means that the drill holes take a lot longer to get to the target depth. So anyways, another thing that kind of tips things maybe in the favor of Tempa-Ute is the fact that we can get data a lot quicker from the drill bit.
Okay, so my last question, and then I'll hand it back to Graham, is could you have believed that you would have had a shareholder register the way you have right now?
I mean, if you asked me when we IPO'd, I could have believed it for sure, but obviously I would have been thrilled with where we've gotten to. But I think it's a function of what we've done every step of the way, which is, and I think what set us apart early doors was, when a lot of companies, and rightfully so, it was a tough market, we're doing, discounted raises with warrants. We were able to tap into some really fantastic strategic investors who saw the vision, who saw the where we could go with this business, and they took a risk and they said, hey, you know what, I'm gonna raise at whatever the level is, either a premium or near to market, and a lot of cases without warrants. And I think the market took notice. They said, wait a second, this is different. This is one of the very few companies who's actually, fighting for their shareholders despite the market conditions. And that has sort of set us up on this, these important building blocks that as we continue to grow the business, new strategic shareholders look at that and go, hey, wait a second, you guys have 20, 30, whatever % held by strategics. We want to be a part of that story. So, if you give me the option to have the registry we do now back at the IPO, I would have taken it in a heartbeat. But based on what we've done and based on how all the stars are aligning, I definitely can see obviously how that happened, and we're looking to continue with that. And especially as we consider and continue our move into the US, looking to continue to build on that, right? That's been one of the secrets to our success, is putting really good people, shares with really good people. And obviously we want to maintain that as we continue to push this forward through development, and then obviously through construction as well.
Okay, very good. Now, seeing that you're the CEO of a tungsten mining business, I'd expect you to say you expect the price of tungsten to go up and up and up for the next few years. But based on you've obviously done probably more research about the tungsten price than anyone on this podcast right now. Mm-hmm. What you've been reading and from your own mind, what is the sort of consensus forecast for tungsten pricing over the next 3 to 5 years, which I'm assuming is when you will be mining?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And there are probably a lot of CEOs who would say it's going it's going to the moon. And it's probably the same guys who think gold's going to $10,000 an ounce. But, I need to be realistic. That's my job. As a CEO, I can't sit here and go, it's going to 1,000, 2,000, and this is going to be the easiest thing ever. No, we sort of plan internally for the worst case scenario, right? Because we need to be able to make sure that we can ride the waves. Now, obviously, we're on a wave going up, and long may that continue. But we understand that we need to ensure that we have robustness and we have the support for our projects to deliver, even if the market changes. That being said, looking at the global tungsten market right now, I'm certainly cautiously optimistic in terms of what the next 2 to 5 years look like. And I think really the reason for that is multiple fold. But number one, there's very few projects coming online outside of China, Russia, and North Korea. So on the supply side, we don't expect to see a huge amount of new supply from what we kind of classify as friendly countries. No one's invested in tungsten for many, many years now, right? And we're seeing now the surge. So there's a lot of new competitors coming up, pulling up old projects. Thankfully, we're ahead of the curve and started this journey, 3 years ago, and say, hey, you know what? We actually believe that this over-reliance on China may not always be a acceptable position. So we were able to start drilling at pilot, and we were able to acquire projects at a different time in the market. So we do have that head start. But overall, looking at the market, I don't see many great projects out there in the Western world that can deliver in what we believe our timelines are. So that's number one, is on the supply side. And then on the demand side, really what we're seeing is a huge surge in demand from defense, right? And that's really across the board. We're seeing it in the US, we're seeing it in the EU, and we're seeing it really globally as there's a huge push to, get defense spending to 5% of GDP. And every incremental dollar we spend on defense, naturally that increases the demand for tungsten because it's needed for a wide array of different kind of units within the defense space. So we're seeing really strong defense demand. We're also seeing some new kind of unique demand come online, tungsten wires and how those filter in, even things like quantum computing, chip technology, there's tungsten components there. Fusion is one that, I'm watching really closely with a lot of interest. We've published an article, Graham, on what we think the future outlook could look like for tungsten and fusion, but long and short, it's the only metal with the radiation shielding and melting point to contain these reactors. So we're seeing strong demand right now, but I think longer term with defense and fusion and a lot of cutting edge technology is going to require more and more of the metal. We see long-term demand staying quite strong. So in the absence of new supply and with demand continuing to grow across those different industries, we're quite confident that the status quo will maintain, and we should see a much stronger market for tungsten going forward. So yeah, that hopefully kind of answers the question. Like I said, we plan for the rainy day, but obviously we're at a position where we would benefit from much higher tungsten prices as we move these projects through development and then production.
Very good. And there's no ready realizable price, is there, for tungsten? It's you just can only see backwards after a transaction's been taking place between a buyer and a seller to get an idea of the spot price.
Yeah, you're right. It's a bit more of an illiquid market, especially right now. What we're seeing is a lot of would-be buyers kind of stepping aside and going, we're going to reduce capacity. This market, we're struggling to even find material. So it's a relatively illiquid market, and you see it kind of print up the main price tracker I follow is Fast Markets, and it prints once a week on Friday. But you're right, that price is based on where a previous trade was. So in any given week, you might be in a position where, because there's no material out there, it's hard to put a price in, right? Because no one's transacted at that level. So that's kind of why we've seen this, stagnant, and then it jumps up, stagnant, and then it jumps up, because some people are on the sidelines going, I just need the material, right? I need to go and do this, therefore I need to go buy it. So it's somewhat illiquid, but we think we have pretty good transparency on the price with Fast Markets, and then also there's a Chinese price as well, which is a bit more liquid, which funny enough is actually outpacing the Western world price right now. So Really strong demand. Like I said, there's a lot. I think we're at the position now, Graham, where we could start to see companies who require tungsten go kind of throwing up their hands and going, we need to shut down. We can't produce. And actually, that's already happening now. So that I think really puts a further impetus on our story, which is deliver these mines as quickly as you can.
So, Oliver, you're on Mum's Monday Upbeat Markets. What's your favorite food?
My favorite food. Okay, all right. Favorite food. Well, that's a good question. Well, I'm going to Thailand for my honeymoon, and so maybe I'll pick that. I love Thai food. Now, if anyone that's listening has been to Thailand, they'll know that Thai food is a lot different in Thailand than what we get here in London. But I'm very looking forward to eating Thai food over the Christmas holidays for my honeymoon.
It's a lot hotter. It's a lot spicier.
It is. It is for sure with different chilies over there. So I'll go with Thai food, Kev. Is that
very good? And the other question,
answer?
I'm very happy. It's your choice, not mine. Mine is chili con carne, but there you go. That's just the way it goes.
Lovely.
It's
very American of you.
Yeah, very Mexican of me. My favorite movie, or your favorite movie, is our final question.
Okay. It's a good question. I would say either The Truman Show or Shawshank Redemption. Those are movies I can watch over and over. Classics. Those are kind of cliche, and I'm sure a lot of people have that, but they're just great movies for every reason.
Shawshank Redemption is one of those movies that you can watch again and again and again and again without actually thinking, I already know the story here, because it doesn't matter. Yeah, because it's so fantastic. So if you've never watched Shawshank Redemption,
what's your favorite movie, Kevin?
My favorite movie is The Shawshank Redemption and A Few Good Men.
Good one. Okay, Graham. Down to you. We can't be Shawshank Redemption though.
Oh God. It's an evolving list, but my most recent one is Triangle of Sadness.
Okay.
Which is a very bizarre film about billionaires and millionaires on a yacht, and it all goes wrong.
Okay.
It's very amusing.
I'm going to have a watch of that. That's interesting.
Go and watch it.
Very good.
Oliver Friesen, thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Of course. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. And lots to catch up on in the not too distant future. So let's keep in touch.
Okay. I mean, what shares have you been looking at, Kevin? Anything catching your eye?
Well, as I've been sick as a dog, I haven't really been looking, to be brutally honest with you. But I've been just looking more macro, and I'm more and more convinced that copper's got to go on a great run. I'm more and more convinced that AI data center type businesses have got to go on a good run, because ultimately these things are going to need. We've got companies such as Active Energy in Dubai doing the data centers. We've got Bizant Resources, which was on the roast if you were watching or listening to that. We're going to have Extract Resources also copper-wise. We've got Galileo copper-wise. These are all in Zambia. Who else have we got? We've got Ethereum, which has been battered for the last few years. They've got great copper resources. There's a whole plethora of different companies, I believe, that have got those type of things. And other resource companies, you've got Blenco Resources is having quite a good run at the minute with its graphite. You've got Sovereign Metals in the dumps because everybody thinks Malawi's not going to do what it says it's going to do. But I don't believe that for a minute, because it's absolutely key, that project, to the whole country. So I can't believe that isn't going to come good for the investors as well as the country. So there's a whole multitude of small cap plays that I believe are partially interwoven with each other, that are around real things, whether that be energy, and we've got energy pathways, we've got different energy ones like the active energy that I was talking about. You've got what was MAST, which is now quantum something or other. You've got those things in natural resources. You've got energy plays, and to me, they're the things that are going to do well over the next few years, because ultimately they're real things and we need them.
I was reading at the weekend about obviously the artificial intelligence is playing a key part in having massive demand constraints on the existing power capacity. But in addition, you've got these cryptocurrencies with all the mining that's going on that has absolutely, apparently it uses something like the whole of or the equivalent of Norway's electricity supply for the worldwide demands of cryptocurrency mining. Have you any thoughts on that, Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fact that the crypto mining is taking a lot of energy out of the system, and we need more and more and more energy. It's one of the reasons why China had produced a lot of bitcoins over the last years, because the energy bills are significantly lower. So how this is going to play out over the next while, where you're going to need multiples more energy to produce one Bitcoin than you did in the past. Then if you just purely look at that from the point of view of how valuable a Bitcoin becomes, then it's going to increase the price of a Bitcoin, because it's so much more difficult to mine it than it was, as it halves and halves and halves and halves. So yeah, but the question we've got to pose is that if the world starts to use AI as a whole, we haven't got enough power. We truly haven't got enough power. So if we haven't got enough power, is it going to work? Is it going to, never mind an electric car or an electric taxi or whatever. If we don't have enough power, how are all these things going to work? If we don't have enough power generation, that's one problem. If we don't have enough metal to take that power generation from where it's generated to where it needs to go, i.e. copper and a load of other metals, then how are we going to do it? How's it going to work?
Your guess is as good as mine. But I mean,
how's it going to work? We've got a copper shortfall coming. Lots of people are talking about 2026. There's going to be a copper shortfall. How are we going to do it? How are we going to build all of these things if we don't have enough copper?
It's all through the collective will of the governments to get on and give permits to the multiple mines and the...
Yeah, even I take your argument, but even some of these big copper mines, especially with low sort of percentage coppers, they take 8 to 10 years to come into production. The problem is now. And I don't think the world even saw that we were going to have such a demand for these things with AI, because we didn't think it was going to happen this quick. But now we've got this, and we've got a population of 2.7 to 2.8 billion people in India and China alone, who are basically just trying to make their lives better. Part of that will be to have electricity in the house. Part of that will be to have a fridge. Part of that will be to have maybe a car, part of whatever type of car it is. And all of those things take copper.
That's a very good point, Kevin. There's one thing that has caught my eye, Kevin, which is a company called WeCap. Have you heard of it at all? WeCap? No? The ticker is WCAP, which is listed on the Aquis Exchange. They hold a 12.2% holding in WeShop, and WeShop is this application where you can buy everything that you can buy on the internet, or almost everything, with the fact that you get actually shares in WeShop, a percentage, typically 10% of your spend will go in shares in WeShop. So if you buy £100 worth of products, say for example you want to shop in online on Boots, you go onto the Boots platform via the WeShop app, and it will allocate £10 of that in WeShop shares. So the whole idea is that when you come out of this so-called lock-in period, which is typically a year, you will then have shares that are trading actually on the NASDAQ, and it could be high, maybe low, but it could be higher, or it could be the same price. But the fact is, your purchase of your product is not affected by the whole WeShop experience, but you may end up having a very nice bonus in a year's time. Anyway, the reason I mention this is that WeCap have a 12.2% holding. WeShop itself is going to list on the NASDAQ very soon, but the SEC, I believe, have held up a lot of the IPOs. But now, hopefully, if the shutdown ends, we're going to see WeShop list, and that will then provide people with a much better understanding of what the value of WeCap's holdings worth in WeShop. And there's a lot of we's in this, but
we need to know what price is it likely to list at on the NASDAQ? Like,
well, it's been guided by their broker Tennyson. They think valuation is about £300 million. This is for WeShop, and if you own 12.2% of that, it values WeCap's holding WeShop at about £36.6 million, which implies about 8.4p a share versus the current price of about 2.7p. Just think it is an interesting situation. I don't hold any shares in WeCap, but I just find it. I do have clients who have WeCap shares, but it's an illiquid stock. It's not Aquis, so you have to bear in mind it's got a spread of 2.6 to 2.7p. So might be mindful of the spread, but it's not a particularly bad spread. And they also have I think there's a 6-month hard lock-in of WeShop. WeCap can't sell any WeShop shares for at least 6 months. So that's another thing to factor in.
They shop.
I know.
It actually sounds like a really good plan, because, I mean, you'd have to think that if people start getting rewarded, they're going to use WeShop more and more and more. It's because it's a real reward. Now, the only downside of that is every time that their volume and their spend goes up, then they're going to be diluting the share price very, very significantly.
Yeah, they have a very complicated plan as to how to address that. But yeah, it's a fair point.
Anyway, a very interesting play. So if you're interested in that, have a look at it. And the other one Oliver talked about, Delta Gold Technologies, going on to Aquis on the 28th of November is the provisional date for it to go on. Hopefully we're going to be speaking with the CEO about that in the not too distant future. It is a quantum computing company, and they're using gold in a very novel way to hopefully stabilize the qubit. So keep an eye out for that one. See how it goes.
It's not very often you hear about gold being used for an industrial process. So it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, probably people are scared. Oh, using gold is going to cost a fortune, but this is nano state gold, so it's like microscopic amounts of gold that would be used to make this. But we need to speak to the professors involved and the CEO and talk to them about how all it's going. But Oliver obviously thinks it's a good one, and there's been some involvement from him. And let's see how we get on.
Well, that's all, folks. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, mum's the word.
This podcast was brought to you by Monday Upbeat Markets. If you would like to appear on a future episode of the Mums Podcast, please email mondayupbeatmarkets@gmail.com.